All right, I am here. And we mark attendance. And this session probably will be a little bit shorter. This chapter is not got much in it. Well, it has a good bit in it, but it's not a lot of material, and it's actually not new material to you. So let me start something else while I'm talking. Okay. Let me send that email I just wrote and thought I sent. Okay. So I haven't checked email today yet, so I just walked in. All right, don't forget, all of you, to mark, to put something in the chat or else talk live at some point. And if you are talking live, I can't hear you because I had the speaker turned off. So now I got it turned on. So I was listening to the sounds of silence. So we're off to another week, and I think I know what unit we're on. I want to glance at something else, make sure it's not in here that I got to do too. No, I don't. Good. Because I just realized something else I had to do this morning. I actually did, figured it out the day or two ago and haven't paused. Okay. Everything graded that was due through last Monday, not yesterday, that had been turned in by yesterday afternoon has been graded. Actually, some things that were due yesterday have been graded also. Yesterday afternoon, I actually got a little ahead on things and went ahead and graded some things. I've still got the rest of what was due yesterday to grade and the discussions to grade, which pretty much doesn't apply to y'all. And then I've got to download and upload and create the link for the discussions this week, because I got to 2 from yesterday, the discussion and the lecture. And now I'll have the 2 from today to do. And I thought I was going to do them last night, but that didn't exactly happen. I took a break and went out and ate supper with the friend last night, and that took a little while. And then I ended up working on another class, my 2413 class, really late, trying to help one student that has hit several problems doing the stuff in there, and try and figure out what's going on again, because they got going and then they're having a problem again, but their servers are losing touch with each other. Let me glance. I just saw an email that I really need to glance at real quick. Okay. That there's some things that I've got coming up to do, and that I want to make sure it wasn't something today that I'm going to have to jump for in the midst of today. So that stuff's all in good shape. Your PowerPoints, they're not all out there yet, but most of them are, and I'm several chapters ahead on those. So those are continuing. I'm getting those prepared and put out there. And then last week that I did have that interview for the teacher award last Thursday, or on last Friday, correction, and it seemed to go well, but I won't know anything till the 25th. This week, remember, Thursday and Friday are student holidays. Now, I said student, I didn't say school, okay? Because for the faculty, we've got required staff development that we have to do, and meetings, really required meetings we have to do for the 2 days, which pretty much is from like 8:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock or something in the afternoon. Normally we'd go down to Calhoun and meet all of us, but obviously this year that's not the case. So it's all online, and so I have to sit here in the office and listen to these things all day. And say I think they start like at 8:30 in the morning, and they go, I know on Thursday I think they go till 4 o'clock, and then Friday they start about the same, and then it goes till 3:30, or hopefully I get my part finished up sooner, so me and my group of instructors that afternoon, that we get out a little bit earlier than 3:30, but we can't start our meeting till 2:30. Although there's a little bit of flex in there of that there's some times that I don't think I'm going to be meeting, because we got a department meeting for an hour on Thursday to plan our budgets and these things that they measure us, that they measure, I won't say measure us, that they measure about how well our students are learning certain things in certain classes, in each class. So in this class actually is one of the ones that they are doing, that they do a measurement on, and that's the measurement was that the students are, that 75% of the students learned OSI models well. Our measurement for it was your first test. And amazingly, most people did really good on that test, on the 1 through 3 test, and that we just used that test, even though it wasn't just OSI model or TCP model, but was other stuff on there too. We just used that test score as our measurement thing. So it's not something, so we try to keep our work down on it. And so we've got to come up with new things to measure on for the next year. Although our intentions is we're going to just measure the same thing, but we're going to raise the number we're trying to achieve to a percentage that show it. But they've got an hour for us to work on that and budget. Well, we've already in our department looked at the budget and went, looks good to us that it's the same budget we've had, that we've requested for the last 3-4 years, and we haven't spent all the money in it in any year, particularly this year, and that we're looking at it, and hopefully things are back to normal next year. So like we've got a huge amount of travel money sitting there. Speaking of which, I got to remember turning my travel form, because they pay me mileage to drive to Catoosa Tuesday and Thursday morning. And that's essentially the only travel we've gotten that we're spending this entire year, is what I'm spending on a drive to Catoosa from Walker 2 days a week for a semester. That there's no conferences or anything for us to go to, so we're going, since the budget's the same for next year, and last year we didn't spend it all anyway either. I'm the one that does the most traveling, and there was leftover money at the end of the year. Most of the others won't go off to the conferences and meetings that I go to, because I go to a number of them. because I know Mr. Spurlock and I are hoping to go back to Montreat College in the fall, because they have a neat cybersecurity conference there that he and I have gone to several years. I think he went 1 or 2 years with me, and then I've been a couple of years since where he couldn't go for some reason, that there was a conflict or whatever, and he wants to go back to it, and I want to go back to it because it's been really good. Up there, they bring in FBI, NSA, private industries, cyber people like from Frito-Lay and stuff to speak, and so it's been really interesting stuff, and they have some real interesting speakers. Last year, probably for me, the last one I went to, last fall it was online, and they were still charging a fee on it, and I didn't pay a fee to attend it. I was going, no, I'm not paying a fee to attend it online, because I really didn't know if I could get time broken away to do online on or whatever. That's always the trick on that one. But they had this guy spoke about cybersecurity and Santa Claus and Noah. And that's Noah as in the Old Testament. Well, the Santa Claus one was rather fascinating, how he related about cybersecurity and Santa trying to keep the secrets and stuff up there at the North Pole. And actually, he had been in on development of this game, this cybersecurity game, and I don't remember what agency he was with that does one every year, and that they build it off of the North Pole and come out with it like in November, and it's basically the flag games on it that you play through on it, and you're trying to figure out how something got stolen from the North Pole, or something or another's happened, or Rudolph got kidnapped one year, I think it was, or whatever. And build a whole scenario with all of these things where people can go in and play on and learn cybersecurity in the process. So it can be fun. I haven't done it.
It really sounds weird, but yeah, I'd like to see that, because now you piqued my interest.
The Noah one was really neat. If y'all know the Old Testament and know on Noah, that they did, that he then talked about, and I actually delivered 2 sermons off of what he presented there, that he went with the scripture right there and mentioned about where it mentions there before the flood about that the world was overrun with all of these people were doing all of this horrible evil, and everything was really bad, and that God looked on it and wanted to get rid of it. Everything was just falling totally apart. And he said, and think about what everybody's saying about the web now, and even what Bruce Lee said a year or 2 ago about the World Wide Web, that if he had a choice on it, he'd wipe it out and redo the whole thing again now.
Yeah.
He said, notice that's the same thing the Bible says there about that. And then he mentioned about the giants of men, and said he didn't think that was really giants necessarily, of tall people, but they were men of well renown. Giants of renown is what I think is the words on it. And he said, that's people that everybody are important people. Everybody looks at it as really important, but they were all doing wrong, not doing right on it. And it was really neat where he carried on that. And I was supposed to do a sermon at a church that Sunday morning, and I heard it on Friday morning. And I went, ooh, I know what I'm preaching on now. And I talked about that and related it to cybersecurity, just like he did to this church that I spoke at that week. Because I do lay speaking and get called to different churches to fill in for preachers being out at different times.
Wow.
That in the Methodist Church, I'm a certified lay speaker, which means I've been through their training several times, and then I've been approved by the church overall. So like this Sunday night, I'm speaking at a church, which I'll probably have 8 or 10 people at best there to hear me, but it's always counts. So, so it was really interesting. So they've had some really good sessions there that have been interesting ones and taught us new things. So I'm hoping they'll have it in person again this fall, and he is too, Mr. Spurlock, and that he and I are intending to go to it if they do, because it's like seems like it may be 2-day conference. I think it's a 2-day conference on it. It's like a Thursday and a Friday, I'm thinking. And then I've gone up there, and that they've actually had before it for a couple of years now that they've brought in some big speaker and had a free luncheon for those that were attending that showed up a day early, and had a real nice lunch in downtown Asheville somewhere for us and a speaker. And so it's been neat and fun. So I like going to it and I get stuff from it. And then I go to other places for other conferences. And Montreat College is a small college, small Presbyterian college up there near Asheville. It's actually at Black Mountain. Just in case y'all are sitting there going, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you other than Asheville. Well, it also happens to be just a couple of miles from where Billy Graham's home was, and then where his big retreat center is. So he's got a connection to that college also there. Although it is Presbyterian and he was Baptist, but that didn't make any difference. No, I don't, and I really haven't been into CLI and other switches or routers other than Cisco.
I just looked into a ProCurve HP. It's similar.
Juniper has an academy program, and I have signed up for it before, but then their stuff just wasn't there when I went into it, that they didn't have hardly anything to it, and that I just didn't get a chance to really pursue it. I need to look at that again to see, because I hear people occasionally mention about the Juniper Academy program and see what they've got again on it, because they've actually grown some over time. So we got in Cisco Academy, and when Cisco started the academy, and the school here started in it in '99, I think. It's before my time.
Wow.
I started in the Cisco Academy program in 2001. And the Academy program was started in 97, I think. 97 or 98. If I could remember when I went to a conference in Miami, I would know for sure on that. Because when I went to a conference down there that was a technical college, community college conference, Cisco spoke there and told about their academy and was promoting it there. And that was first I heard on it, but I didn't really know who Cisco was, other than they had something to do with the internet, which I was doing stuff on, but I really wasn't playing with the backbone of it.
Right.
And that I actually at that point had already bought stock in them, and I knew that their price of their stuff was going sky high, and that they were a major something with it, but I really didn't know what we had, what it was into. Cisco's been around with the Academy program somewhere around 25 years. Because we got an award here for 15 years back in 2015. So we go back to somewhere around 2000, because I've got an old 10-year award that they gave out after we'd been 10 years, several years, when they suddenly decided they ought to give awards for that. And they gave us a plaque. And then like a year or two later, they give us an award for being a member for 15 years. Because I remember the PR people going, we just wrote a story about being 15 years just a year or two ago, it seems. I said, yeah, that's when they gave us the award, and now they're giving us the 20-year award. Or the 15-year award. The 20-year award we haven't gotten yet. I'm pretty sure we haven't yet. So in any event, that's where we're going. Now, this week, so Thursday and Friday, if you write your instructors, email them, don't be surprised if you don't get responses back, because we're tied up having to listen to this stuff all day, each of the days. And I know for most instructors, when it's 4:15, they go home and they don't look at their email and stuff anymore. I should be that evening. I expect to be, but seems like for some reason there's something I got to do Thursday evening also, but I don't remember. I know today I've got backpack lessons later today and this evening, and let's see, I got to add one more name to the list. And then tomorrow, I know I got stuff going on. I got a meeting tonight too online at 8 o'clock for Kiwanis, the district. And Thursday evening, I'm thinking there's something I'm supposed to do, but I have no idea what at the moment it is. But maybe I don't. I know theoretically I'm supposed to wash clothes that night and try to work on some stuff myself. Because it seems like Thursday nights when I get clothes washing. And then I got, oh, I know, there is a meeting. It's a Kiwanis meeting because I'm speaking on cybersecurity again Saturday morning to the Georgia Kiwanis, this time where 1 month ago, on February the 13th, and now this is March the 13th, I spoke to about cybersecurity, did a training session on just a basic informational session for their mid-year training. Now I'm doing it for the Georgia Kiwanis this Saturday morning, but Thursday night they're going to show us how to use Zoom or whatever it is we're using. And so I need to sit in on that to make sure I know how that works versus when I'm working here on Collaborate normally. And I got to do WebEx on Friday to lead that meeting for the school. So I'll have these all mixed up in my head. All right. So that's that. Chapter 10, it is 10 this week, isn't it? I've got my numbers right because I'm not looking at anything right here. Actually goes into back to, I think it was like chapter 2, when we learned how to use the switch. If y'all remember, we spent a chapter on, they showed you the commands to go in and set up the switch and that type stuff. Somewhere early on, if it wasn't 2, it was something like that. Then this one goes in and shows you how to set up a router. So for that reason, I've already started Packet Tracer. So I am going to share my screen with Packet Tracer and then show you a few of these commands, but you're going to figure out real quick that the fact you know how to do the Cisco switch, you can do the Cisco router with no problem. It's almost all the same things, except remember, the router is working with routing and IP addresses more directly, where the switch was working on layer 2 and doing more MAC addresses, okay, and that type stuff. And so it's a little bit different, but most of it's going to be the same. So it's not going to be, this is not an all new thing. So let me share the screen. Make sure I click the right things here. And it says I'm sharing a screen now, so I'm going to drag this one over here. And it looks like I've got a screen shared. Is that what y'all are seeing now? The Packet Tracer screen? Okay, good. All right, so I'm just going to grab a router down here, and I'm just going to use the 1941 one. It's an older router, but it's what we're doing in this chapter. It really doesn't make any difference what Cisco router we're really dealing with. This stuff's all the same stuff. So, and notice I am using Packet Tracer 8, which is what y'all need to be using also, because theoretically, according to Cisco, it gets rid of the problems about doing, or where we've had problems with the Packet Tracer questions in the test. Now, I don't know if it solved it or not. They've said they never understood what the problem was before, but now they're saying, at least acknowledging there was a problem and saying it's supposed to fix the problem. So I'll go into the command line in it, and y'all probably can't see the command line now, so I'm going to have to stop sharing and share the device. And so sorry about that. I forget that when it does that, it then, that's a different application as far as what it thinks, is I have to do a different share. So there we go. Okay, so now y'all are seeing that. So in here, we're going to go to the CLI like normal. and that it is essentially the same as on the router as on the switch, remember? And it starts up, remember where it asks you about the initial configuration dialog, you always answer no. Actually, what that goes in and asks you, what do you want to name this device? What do you want to do? A few other certain things, but it's not necessarily the way you want all the things or some things that you want to set up on the device. So it is there, but the suggestion always is say no. Oh, I guess I wasn't in it. Sorry. I was in the window, but I wasn't inside where I was supposed to do. So then I'll hit return to get started, and I'm at my normal prompt, just like you had on the switch, except it says router instead of switch. The greater than sign, number sign is the same as in the switch. So then to get to exec mode, we'll do exec to get to the privileged mode. Except no, that's not right. It's ENA. And so since I don't have it turned off to doing on the router.
Control Shift 6. Control Shift 6. Yeah, just type in there Control Shift 6 at the same time and you'll get it.
There, okay. I've Control Q or sometimes I'll catch on and sometimes not, and I've just learned to just wait it out on it.
Yeah.
Because it's where it's picked it up as a domain name and it's trying to go out and look
Trying to
on
find
the
it.
internet for it to resolve that domain. So I'll do ENA correctly now. When we go to the number sign. Just like on the switch to get into configuration, it is config T again. I can't type. And then from there, and I'm going to look at the book because I want to catch a couple of things they go through right here. Yeah. And so there you're at the config spot. They show you in the chapter about renaming your device, identically the same as you did on the switch. It's again host name or host, and then whatever name you're going to call it. So we'll call this one Collaborate. I've never called a device Collaborate before, so it's got to be a first for everything. So there we've renamed it. When you finish, remember, copy run start is mandatory again on you to save it. That's going to be your same save command as you had before, so no differences in terms of that. If you want to secure your going into the exec privileged mode, it's the same as you did before with the enable. Just remember, enable is the command. Secret and whatever you're going to use a password. I'm just going to use password. But remember, on real devices, don't use password. Okay? Use a secure password for it. But for here in class, you're going to see, and you have seen already generally, that Cisco uses 3 passwords in the activities of class, Cisco, and now CCNA 7, I think, is the one they're using now with some of the stuff. Originally, you used class and Cisco on everything, and then when they got to about version 5, they added in CCNA 5 as a password they do sometimes, and now I think it is 7 that's showing the version number. Try to stay with those passwords as they give them to you, because then if you have a problem and you send it to me, I'll be able to get into it. The other part is if when I get it and if I go in when you submitted it and something's not right and I go in to look and see what did you do wrong, I'll be able to get into it because I can guess it's one of those 3 passwords normally, or go look at the directions and see if it was something different. So stay with the ones in here that they suggest, but do not use those 3 passwords or password out there as your real passwords. Password is actually the password that, according to studies, is used somewhere around 70% of the time as a password. So if we want to get into Joe Smith's stuff, first thing we're going to guess is password, and most of the time will be in his bank account, according to the studies. Now, I haven't gone out and checked that on it or whatever. And you can write down passwords and everything now. They used to say don't write them down. Now they do. Just don't put them as sticky notes around your screen or on the back of your keyboard. There's none on the back of my keyboard, is there? And such. That's where security auditors are going to be looking for them. You could have them in your wallet. You could have them someplace else. Just don't have them right there with the computer, right off on it, to be easy on it. But where you can get to the passwords, because there's no way we can remember the passwords. I know there's the password managers out there, and some people use them and like them. I don't use them. I'm a little leery of them because they, just like anything else, can get hacked. And
Right.
then if that's what I'm using for everything, that may really create me a whole lot of problems, besides the fact that people can then get into the other stuff from there. Theoretically, they got all kinds of protections on it, but any lock can be broken. And so I'm trusting my locking ability better than using those. And I'm quite sure those are being attacked regularly with people trying to break them. So in any event, so then they show about how to secure your exec mode on for your user. So getting onto it, and remember, you can put it where it is a password required when you first logged into the machine, and that the command on that one is line console. And I know it seems strange that you have to put that 0 at the end, but yes, you do, because you could have more than one console terminal to a router. Okay. Unlikely, I've never seen it done, but it is possible to do, because you can add in the modern ones, you've got add-in cards that you can plug into them to add more ports into them, and you could put a second console port in there. So you could, and remember, they start numbering from 0 on these things. So that's just saying the first console port, which is normally what you're always going to use. And I'm sort of suspicious. Yes, I did. Yeah, I typed something extra back there. I did, and it wasn't going to work. So I'm going to do that. Then that puts me into line configuration. And then I'm just going to put password and whatever password's going to be. So to make it easy for everybody to break into my router, I'll make it password again. And I'm sitting here thinking I'm typing on the one that's showing on your screen, that's showing on my screen, when instead of typing in the real one, when I really was typing in the right thing, but I was looking at the other screen on it. That's a little weird. The pointer in the right place, and so as I typed, it looked like I was typing one place when I really wasn't. It was the reflection on it. So now if I went and turned off the router, assuming I do a copy run start first, and then I turned off the router, when I came back on, first thing it would want to know before it got to the router greater than sign would be I'd have to enter a password. And then when I'm going to go in enable mode, I'd have to enter a password there too to get the privilege mode. So then from there we can go, they show how to set up for doing access through the internet into your router, assuming it's connected to the internet, which would be through the VTY terminal, which would be using Telnet or SSH. You really don't want to be using Telnet to do that. Telnet is not encrypted, but y'all need to know Telnet, because Telnet is still on everything and still is used some. But if you're doing it across the internet, you really don't want to be using Telnet. You want to use SSH. SSH actually uses port 22. I was taught that yesterday afternoon in the Security Plus the trainer class I'm taking. And that's when port I thought it was anyway. So then we can set up line VTY which is a virtual terminal on it, and then 0 because we're saying starting with the first port, and that we're setting it up for 4 virtual lines coming into it. So we said we're going to allow up to 4 connections coming in off the internet at a time on it, which would be 0, 1, 2, and 3. So everybody following that? So it's not 0 through 4. It's starting with 0 of the interface 0, and it's 4 interfaces. So that'd be 0, 1, 2, 3, just to confuse us totally. And then from there, that we can set that there's a password that they will have to use. So we'll be real fancy again and use that real difficult password that nobody will ever guess to get into our equipment of password. And then you have to do login. If you don't set login on that virtual interface, that they can't log in through it, because that's enabling login on it. So you have to do login there. That just enables login to it. So that's what login does, because that command by itself just looks a little odd to it. But what you're doing is you're enabling login on those 4 interfaces. And then you're going to tell it which transport protocol are you going to use. Okay, now agreed, we've not gotten to the transport layer, so you really haven't seen about them yet, but you need to know about them now, okay? Because that's several chapters away. Because 11 and 12 are going to be, to me, the hardest 2. 12 is going to be the hardest chapter, in my opinion, in the whole book, okay? Just as a warning to you. But I will tell you this too, all of you can do it. You can make it through it. It's totally different and something new to you, totally. This other stuff's been new to y'all also. We'll exclude you, Todd, from some of that. But it's been new stuff also for you, I know, too.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody else has figured out by now from what you said and from what you say you're doing that you have something to do with running computers and something with networks.
Yeah.
And besides that, you gave away and told us that you were Novell certified the other week.
Hey.
I'm not.
That's dating me now, and I don't like it.
And we could have a couple of the others. Maybe I have some stuff too that I don't really know on. So we're going to do transport, and then we're going to say input, and then we're going to tell it which protocol we're going to use, and that you ought to use SSH. And
So there's no space in there? Okay. Because I wasn't, this portion of it, it's really hard for me.
I'm not paying attention to what I was typing.
No, it's just really hard for me because I still don't get Telnet and SSH stuff.
But
I've got a problem.
The difference between the 2 of them, there's one major difference on the 2 of them, is SSH sends everything encrypted. Telnet sends it unencrypted, plain text. So, Todd, if you're talking to, let me look to somebody else in the class that you're sending messages back and forth to Sylvia, and you send across, and you go to log into Sylvia's machine, and I am sitting there and monitoring the packets going across. I will see the password you use in plain text, and I will know your password. Okay? If you use Telnet when it goes across, and this is the example they always use on it. If you use SSH instead, when it goes across, it will be an encrypted password. So when I see it go across and I see the password go across, it does me absolutely no good because I didn't get the password. I got that encrypted mess. And the whole traffic is actually being sent encrypted. So whatever you're sending to Sylvia, I have no idea in the world what it is because it's all encrypted. Now, depending on the level of encryption being used, I may be able to break it fairly easily, depending on how long of a key we use. But it is encrypted, and you just made it more difficult for me to figure out what in the world it is you're sending across. If you did it with Telnet, I can read everything, plain text that you sent across. And I can think back to when I first connected up Swainsboro Tech onto the internet, and for the first 5 or 6 years that we had it, because we connected in 1990 and had a connection to it before we started. The World Wide Web came along in 93, and we got on it in 94 and started doing things on there. But prior to that, I was getting on there, and I'd go on there and just watch traffic. I could read things that people were sending to each other all over the world, and I was reading all kinds of weird things. Also, some really neat things that I'd see go across too. So you never did know what you'd see, and none of it was encrypted back then. So you really want to use SSH now on it. Does that make SSH and Telnet? And that's basically the only thing you need to know about the difference between the two of them. Telnet's unencrypted, SSH is encrypted. And if you just remember that, you got those two down pretty well. So now that we got that space in there that Todd had on me. And then if you want to encrypt all of the passwords in the config file, because remember, if we do a show run at this point, all of these passwords are going to show up plain in there. And we've put 3 passwords in there, and we'll be anybody that can get into the first level of access, they can do a show run and they'd be able to read all the passwords. Or if it was printed out, all the passwords would be clear. So everybody follow on that part? So if we want to encrypt them in the config file, so that when we look at the config file, which show run, that's all it's doing, is just displaying the running config file. You could do show start, show, and so on. Each of the config files are out there. That we're going to have to exit back out of here. Actually, we don't have to. I figured that one out yesterday. Then the book, they show you to exit before you do it, but we can go ahead and do it here. It realizes in config that when it's configuring that this is not a line configuration, and so it will automatically drop us back down to the level and do it for us. Or at least it did yesterday for me. Because y'all got to remember, I teach the same thing on Monday and Wednesday morning in person to the other class. And so I'll hit enter, and you notice it jumped down and it took the command. Okay, so it's done it now. Now, if I exit on out of here, okay, I didn't show them this one yesterday, but y'all already know how to do this one. And that is the banner MOTD. What does MOTD stand for?
Message of the day.
It's not the name of a vaccine for the COVID out there. It's message of the day, as he was saying. Okay. And actually, back when I first started putting connection out there on the internet, and I was just mentioning a moment ago, back in the early 90s, and that we were running a Unix machine, all network across our school on it. That I would actually use it to put out messages to people, and I would actually use it as a message of the day, which is what it was originally intended as. That when you logged on initially, because this is from Unix, that when you logged on, that it gave you this little message right there, and that y'all can see similar in some other type things, and that like when you go to Google, remember their little logo, they change it daily according to what's going on. Yesterday, it should have had pictures of women into the Google thing. I don't remember noticing what the Google logo was, but it should have been, because yesterday was International Women's Day. I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but it was. And usually Google's really good on picking up all of those little things. That if it suddenly that they declared that it was Dwight Watt Day, Google would figure out some way to get my picture into their logo, but that'll never happen. So then we can put a little message there. You got to put some delimiter in front of it, and there's no requirements on what the delimiter is, but you use the same delimiter to start it and a delimiter to end it. Number sign was what was traditionally used. So I'm going to put hello. Nowadays, it's usually used for actually a legal message there that says this router belongs to so-and-so. If you're not authorized, do not go any further. You're trespassing or something to that effect. And the lawyers will write all kinds of stuff up on it. In the past, I say back when we were literally running as terminals off of that Unix system, like when it was the day before Thanksgiving holidays, I put on there a Happy Thanksgiving, or something like that, different things, so that it would say something. Or if I was going to take the machine down that day at 12 o'clock, shut the server down for maintenance, that's where I would put it on there, and that would tell people as they got on that they needed to get off by 12 o'clock that day. So now I've got that one in there. So now I'm going to exit out of that, and we'll do a show run. And would one of y'all teach me how to spell? Or teach my fingers how to spell? Because they want to spell things differently than things normally are required to be spelled. Remember, just like on the switch, if you don't like that little message sitting there, it's going to ignore it when you start typing. But if you're like me, that it just jumps odd at you to be typing something right after that, and knowing it doesn't pay attention to all of that, that if you just hit enter, you'll get the prompt again. And that actually works when you're at command prompt in Windows, and if you were using old DOS also. So that's Unix type thing off of that. Now, if I do a show run, that you see that we've got stuff, but notice right there, enable secret. What was the password we put in for that?
Password.
Password. If that looked like password, that's worse than my spelling of my typing. If that's supposed to be password. Because notice it starts in $1, something, 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 way, way, way long. It says secret, just like we put in, because we did enable secret, and then we put password, which was the password. The 5 tells us that it's using MD5 as its way to encrypt it, that it's using MD5 encryption. That's what the 5 is there for, is that tells us what type of encryption. I'm pointing at the wrong screen, and y'all couldn't tell I was pointing again, because I got this sitting on both screens, and I look at the wrong one. So then if we look in, we see the, I'm not clicked in here. Let me click in here. So I want to see the rest of this, and notice that, and then notice it did have spanning tree in here, which we don't, up at the top, which we didn't have in the switch, because switches don't use spanning tree. And then the interface stuff looks the same as we saw before. So you'll set the interfaces up here just like you did in the switch. And remember, gigabit Ethernet can be abbreviated real short for those of you that type like me, to just the letter G. If you want to spell it out like it does there, you can, and that INT. But when it shows it, it puts it out in the full length on it. And so notice it's got the duplex, which we've talked about before, and so on, the IP address, which we haven't put any of that in on this stuff, so it's not there. And then line console, notice it's got a weird password again to it. I can't remember right off. 7 is not using MD5. It's using a different encryption technique, and I don't remember which one it is. The 7 tells us which one it is, but I don't remember that right off. But it tells us, that's actually telling us the encryption technique used. Okay, and notice it's all encrypted right there. The other part is, remember to always make sure before you shut your device down, do your copy run start, and that we want to go to start config. And so we've got it saved. That's all copy run start does, is it just saves the file, because otherwise it's just like you're typing in WordPad or Notepad. You've typed it all in nicely right there, and maybe printed it out or whatever, but you shut Notepad or WordPad down. What you had there is gone if you did not do your save. Now, I used to be able to say Word on that also, but now Word auto saves continuously on you. So if you go and crash it down, it keeps it out there on an auto saved copy that will get most stuff back for you. But WordPad, Notepad still, you've got to save regularly. Okay. Any questions on that? That is chapter 10. And actually I ended up taking the whole hour anyway. I lied. So that's all we're doing in 10. Now 11 and 12. 11 is going to get to IP version 4 addressing, and then 12. Well, 12 is not going to be that hard. Well, correction. I told you 12 was going to be the hard chapter. Actually, 11 is going to be the hard chapter. Because when we talk about subnetting, is going to be the tricky one. 12 will be pretty simple with IP version 6. There's not a lot. So,
hey, are we doing the transport layer?
Transport layer comes like in 13. No, yeah, 14.
14? Okay.
13 is ICMP, which is still on the network layer. So we've got several chapters on the network layer, because that's when you're looking at how the network runs and everything, the biggest amount of things that happen is really on the network layer.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's where you're doing all the IP addressing and everything else on it. So that's where we'll spend the most. So actually 11 next week will be the hard one. I may set us up we may need to set up an extra session next week. Let me look at the calendar real quick. Unless I've got 2 weeks on 11. And I don't. 12 actually goes through the holidays. I may do 11 may be pretty well covered both of those weeks with just a brief coverage of 12 in the second week. So we may we'll probably overflow on 11 into the following week. However, the other part is I will also give you my handout. Actually, I'm using it next week, and I'll have recorded the end of next week, because the 18th and 19th I speak at this North Carolina Computer Instructors Association. And I think I'm doing 4 presentations. I'm doing 2 different presentations. I think I'm doing both twice. I'm not sure. I gotta look at schedule again. One of them is on number systems, which y'all already know, and y'all need it for chapter 11. That's where we're really building for when we did that. And then the other one will be on subnetting. And I will get y'all, I'm going to record that session in the process too, or intend to. And then y'all can listen to what I do as my hour presentation to them on subnetting. Okay. And actually it's using the same PowerPoint that I used to teach the CompTIA deep dive series last fall on Network Plus. And I did 1 session on subnetting there and 1 session on number systems. So I will get y'all that one also. Okay. So y'all can watch it.
In these coming up modules, chapters, whatever you want to call them, are you going to be going into IPv6 pretty deep, or is that going to be in the next class?
Deep. However, chapter 12 is IPv6.
Okay.
That's all that chapter's on. They're adding more into it, and actually the next courses really won't touch on IPv6 other than just mentioning it at times. But they spend a chapter telling you about IPv6. Now, that's in this version 7 of the curriculum. That was one thing that was new added into this course. They had a little bit on IPv6 before, but it was just a few pages at the end of the chapter on IP on it. Now it's got its own chapter with more information on it.
Gotcha.
And I will tell you all this much too. I am by no means an expert on IPv6. IPv4, I can tell you stuff all backwards and forwards on it, but I'm not a total expert on it either. We can find people out there who know more than me, but I know more than what you need to know.
Good deal.
Okay. And then in a few years, y'all may know more than me. And there may be somebody who knows more than me already in classes. I never do know what I get in classes. All right, so that's it for there. And then the last week or so, this week, the end of the week, you may not get responses back very well from me on Thursday and Friday. But I should definitely answer by Saturday afternoon. But Saturday morning, I'm going to do that presentation too. Then next week, on Thursday and Friday, I'll be doing a couple of sessions, 2 or 4 sessions. They're an hour long each for that North Carolina group. I go to their conference normally every year, and they charged me $20 for it this year, which just renewed my membership in the North Carolina Computer Instructors Association, which I think is a rather neat name. Look at the acronym for it. It's actually NCCIA. So I'm a member of the CIA, of the North Carolina branch of it. And as a cybersecurity instructor, I think that sounds rather neat.
That is pretty cool.
Because they normally have a Cisco session for the people in the southern states the day before they have that conference. And then they told me about that conference when I went up to that a couple of years, but I couldn't go to it then because as a state employee to travel out of state, you got to get all kinds of permissions. And so I could not just write back and ask for permission to stay up there for a couple more days. But then I've been going to it for several years now, probably about 5 years now. And it's always a neat conference, and they've had me speak at it for several years on different things. So I'm considered a North Carolina computer instructor. And I actually copied that conference one year, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I think it was, in Georgia, but it just didn't, the Georgia instructors just didn't go for it like I was hoping. I was hoping to get a big, nice conference for the Georgia instructors, but it just didn't work out like I had hoped. We did it and had it one day, and that was really neat because we'd never done that before. And I may try to do it again for them, but it's been really neat. And North Carolina supported me on it because their idea was if we could get it going in Georgia, similar to conference, maybe we could start getting together and do it together and do even a bigger conference than what they were doing as a regional one between the 2 states, and do something even bigger on it. So they were gung-ho of jumping in with me. And there were people in Georgia that were very supportive of it, but I just didn't get the support I wanted. All right, so I'm going to let y'all go. It's 12 o'clock. We've used up Todd's whole lunch hour and probably someone else's lunch hour for listening to me today. And if you didn't put something in the comment box, but I think all of y'all have, glancing there, put something in there so that I can see that on it. So this chapter, everything should be familiar. I don't think, like Grayson said, it's almost everything you've basically seen it all before. It's just you're doing it on a router now instead of a switch, and that scares people. But that's why I wanted to go through hands-on on it for y'all to see us doing it. And that you could see that, no, Dr. Watt didn't throw us something totally out of the blue, totally different. And that he didn't totally lose his mind today. Now, y'all may have that comment about me other days. I don't know. There are some days I would agree with you also, if that's what y'all have thought. I would join in. Okay?
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because it can be interesting.
Well, have a good rest of your week.
Y'all have a good time. I'm going to stop the recording.